Hi, I'm Kristin Tjornehoj from the University of Wisconsin River Falls. With me is guest Jason Ham from the West Point Military Academy. He is performing with the symphony band at UW River Falls a commissioned piece called the UFO Concerto by Johan de May. Johan de May has been on campus before. We hope to have him here to this campus again. He's an absolutely amazing composer, originally from Amsterdam and now living in New York City as well. So it's through the composer and the idea of the commission that Jason and I got together to work this magic, if you will, your musical magic on this composition as you are trying to, as a euphonium player, promote music and raise the bar on the quality of pieces available for your instrument.
Absolutely, and fortunately, Wisconsin River Falls has been a big part of this project, as you well know. You mentioned Johan de May. Johan de May and I have had a friendship really since 2009. And at that time, I was introduced to him, and I've sort of been on a personal mission over the last several years to have the brightest composers and the foremost composers write for the instrument. Hopefully, a lot of your viewers will know what the euphonium is, but the odds are that they don't. The euphonium is an instrument, you probably see it and they think of a baby tuba. People probably know it as a baritone horn, but it's actually a euphonium. And so I commissioned Johan to write this piece, and the result, as I think you would agree, is absolutely outstanding. I think he's really written a work that is going to be around for a long time. And it's a work that, obviously from the title, UFO, people think of it as being out of this world, to use a really cheesy line on that. But the other side of it is that sometimes the euphonium in different circles, particularly in Europe, is called the UFO. E-U-P-H-O, the first 5 letters of the instrument, and so UFO worked over to UFO, and so you get UFO Concerto. So that was the idea behind it, and I think he's written a dandy. I think he's really written an outstanding piece.
Well, and I love the idea of that title, and then it started out as a 3-movement work, and with you and him working together, and he being a low brass tuba euphonium, or excuse me, trombone euphonium player. I've got some photos of you working together and playing through the stuff and making sure it's really challenging for the soloist, and yet it pushes every person in the wind band at some point or another to their absolute peak, and that's what I think I love about the music of Johan de May.
Well, I think especially on this piece, you mentioned that it really pushes the band. I think the band in this piece is one that gets pushed just as much as the soloist. I think there's not a person in the band that really escapes from having their moment, whereas the light sort of shines on them. And you mentioned that it was a 3-movement work. Anytime a piece is being written, it's an incredibly organic process. For example, this work began, it's in 5 movements now, and the first and second movements really were the first movement, and then the 4th and 5th movements really were the 3rd movement. It's the second movement, or what is now known as the 3rd movement, is really where everything began to change. The first and last movements, which are now 1, 2, 4, and 5, really kind of in concept stayed the same, but the second movement originally was supposed to be a moment where I was supposed to walk around the back side of the band and to play with all the different percussion instruments. But we began to think that process through a little bit and said, well, what if we go to a place and the stage is too small? Or what if we go to a place and maybe this player is uncomfortable with that? So there's all kinds of different conditions. Even in the first movement, Johan's original design was that I would stay off stage about the first 40 or 50 bars and play the opening melody, and then walk on stage. But again, you have to think there's always a practical side to what you're doing. For example, what if where we were playing didn't have an off stage? What if there was no real way to do that? Where there was no way to play antiphony? So those are things that always cause a piece to be organic and cause it to change. And that's why UFO Concerto is not a 3-movement work, it's now a 5-movement work. And what really almost frustrates me a little bit about Johan is that the 3rd movement, which is I think one of the prettiest tunes that we have in all of our literature now, he came up with in a matter of a couple of days. And when you're dealing with that kind of talent, I mean, that's why I sought out Johan de May, because obviously you said he was a trombone player, and being a trombone player, he also plays a little bit of euphonium. So I'm looking for composers who understand the instrument first and really understand the wind orchestra, the wind band, the concert band second, And like I said, we've got a work now that I believe is a gem and will be around for many, many years to come.
Well, and I thank you for that, and I'm very honored to be a part of that consortium and having the premiere here at UW River Falls.
Yeah.
It's going to be more than exciting.
It's going to be a good time, and I really appreciate you being part of it. I mean, we can't do this without, you can't build a consortium without members and people who are willing to champion the work. And River Falls and you, of course, Chris, have been an absolute great force in that. It's really developed a great respect. I have a great respect for this campus, the students that I've met, you, the program here. And I'm excited to see where River Falls continues to grow and to go.
Well, and with that in mind, keep me in mind for other future consortiums.
Absolutely,
because
will do.
that consortium idea of getting all of these groups together who pay part of a stipend to the composer, so that we can keep the creative process of composition happening.
Exactly right.
It reflects our society. And one of the things I like about Yuandami is the influence of the European folk music. I'm just I've got a heart for the dance.
Yeah, that's right.
I love to
That's
dance, and I like music, and I just like all of those things. So I like the international flavor. I like that that we can bring the world to River Falls, and that our students, yes, as much as I love for them to travel and want them out and about, which I do, I promote. We've got great programs, but I also like the idea of bringing to this college campus so that we are not insulated and sterile.
Exactly right.
I mean, our job is to bring the world and expose students for that next generation and to see what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, I would totally agree with that. And you know, obviously, River Falls, being a suburb of Minneapolis, you have an incredible resource right there. But you know, as I've told some of the students here, there's really no excuse to not have, regardless of where you are, regardless of where your school is, not to have some sort of national view as to what's happening in your field. We're too well connected. You and I talked about this earlier today. We're way too well connected in media, and we're way too well connected just in terms of the fact that you can, I mean, I text on my phone with people in England and in China and that sort of thing, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be using the resources that we have, and a consortium brings those resources together. I mean, the fact that, you know, I mean, I think you mentioned yesterday, you were Skyping or with the composer and that sort of thing. We have so many resources to use, and as you said it well, I'd like to bring the world here to River Falls, and I believe that's exactly what you're doing.
Well, with that perspective, as a performer of the West Point Band, tell us just a little bit about your challenges as a performer and what you envision your role is in bringing music to the United States and beyond.
Well, first off, I have a unique platform in the fact that I am a euphonium player. Most people say euphonium, they can't even spell it. So that's always an interesting in when people don't exactly know what you play. But of course, you say baritone horn or something like that. People are a little closer. Baby tuba, tenor tuba, in lay speak, so to speak. But I have a unique role in the building consortiums, and having composers write for my instrument is just one avenue. One of the things, you know, we love to get, as a performer, you love to get the big stage. You love to play. I mean, I've had the opportunity to play in places like, as a soloist, in places like Carnegie Hall and the Chinese National Library in Beijing, and those are truly wonderful experiences. But I think for me, what I love is the small little community recital series, where you go into these towns that, especially in the Northeast where I live, you go over into Connecticut or you go over down into New Jersey, and you play these small recital series where no one's ever heard of your instrument before. And to me, I enjoy that almost as much as the big stage, probably more, because there's always a personal aspect to it. And you know, it's funny because when people see my instrument, it looks so much like a tuba, they think tuba. And so when they hear it, and it doesn't do anything like what they expect a tuba to do, it's just to see their reaction on their face, that's the payoff for me. And so I've had the opportunity to perform in some very unique places, very small chamber series, where, like I said a moment ago, we're so well connected. So you play for this person, and oh gosh, I know this person over in this community who would love to hear this instrument. And so before long, you've begun to develop a small following. As a euphonium player, I mean, we kind of joke around in professional euphonium speak and say that you have 2 times better a chance of being a U.S. Senator than a professional euphonium player, because there are at least 100 U.S. Senators, and there are about 50 of us in the United States who can really make a living from the euphonium. And that's a tough challenge when you're teaching young euphonium students. You always present that challenge to them and say, this is a tough field to break into. Any performance field of any type is hard to break into. But in particular, for me, it's the amount of jobs is almost a little discouraging sometimes. So actually be able to do this and further the instrument. And as I said, having composers write for the instrument is just one avenue. I said to a class this morning, I said, great musicianship always wins the day. As a musician, your job is to take that instrument and play it to the best of your ability with the time that you have. And so from that, obviously every time I get behind the horn, I think, man, not only is another generation of potential euphonium players listening, but will people, off of my performance, will people appreciate this instrument? And when they hear of another euphonium player coming to the area, will they go hear that person? Will they endorse what they're doing? So when you're that small a community, we can ill afford for players to not take the instrument seriously, not saying not have a sense of humor, but they have to take the instrument seriously and to develop it with things like literature and things like great performances and putting us in venues that we wouldn't normally be in. I think of one of my solo friends who is in the United Kingdom. He travels the world as a euphonium soloist, and I think one of the most important gigs that he's done, I would say within the last several years, is a fashion show in Milan, Italy. All these amazingly beautiful women, and they're going out and modeling the clothes, and he's out there with his euphonium as they're all circling around him. That's the kind of thing we need, because it plugs in. Fashion obviously influences our culture. Absolutely. And so for him to be involved with something like that, and to have the euphonium, an instrument no one knows, essentially, to have that sitting in the middle of a fashion show in Milan, Italy, a center of the world that has produced numerous fashion gurus and amazing trends, to have him do that is huge. So it's important what we do on the concert stage. It's important also what we do in plugging ourselves into venues that we wouldn't normally be in.
Music must serve the public.
Absolutely.
And we're competing with iPods, we're competing with technology and the computer, and it's very easy to insulate yourself and stay home. And yet there's nothing as rewarding and inspiring to me as a live performance. And so that is what we try to do here, is create exciting, interesting, unique things. Now tonight we're going to have a tuba euphonium ensemble that we're putting together from all the way through Minnesota and Wisconsin. We've had the buzz going for about a year. You play in a tuba euphonium ensemble with one of our former guests from here, Alan Baer from the New York Philharmonic. And so I know you play in a group with him. Tell me a little bit about venues, ideas, and making a life.
Right. The group you're alluding to is known as the New York Tuba Quartet. It's a group that it was around in the I'd say mid to late 1970s, and had a tremendous influence on tuba quartet literature, or from there tuba and euphonium ensemble literature. First off, tuba euphonium ensemble, you say that word and people think, oh my gosh, what kind of a geek do you have to be to play in that group? But it's not the case at all, because you look at the tuba and euphonium, and again, it has to do with our stigmas. And every time people hear it, it's kind of like when people haven't heard the euphonium, and then they hear it for the first time, and like, wow, I didn't know it could do that. Same sort of thing with the tuba and euphonium ensemble. They didn't know that it can play these exciting, not only wind band, but orchestra and brass band transcriptions, and they hear an ensemble and go, wow, that was actually, I see a tuba and I think oompa oompa, and I'm hearing this gorgeous sound come from that. But in terms of what I'm doing back in New York, I'm in a tuba quartet at the United States Military Academy. We have one there. But recently I reformed the New York Tuba Quartet, and you're right, it was with Alan Baer, who is the principal tuba of the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. It's also with Derek Finstermacher, the principal tuba of the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra, and Aaron Vanderwill, who's the former principal euphonium of the New York Staff Band. We're all coming from different avenues there, me in a military band, one in a Salvation Army band, and two from orchestras. So that alone brings a wealth of experience in different performing aspects that we would have. But as far as that tuba quartet is concerned, it's New York City, for crying out loud. There are 8 million people in New York City, and in a place like that, even though it's a much different cultural environment now than it was, say, 20, even 30, 40 years ago when this other quartet was there, it's still, I say it as a euphonium player, and I joke around with people in the West Point band who are always commenting like, wow, you're always playing everywhere, and you're playing in the city a good deal. And I said, it's interesting because you're a flute player, or you're a trumpet player, a much more culturally accepted instrument, and I'm playing more than you. You need to, get to it. You need to work on it, and because there's so many opportunities. But what we hope to do We're performing at some tuba and euphonium conferences, which is very easy to do that when you're a tuba quartet. You're always invited in, especially with that kind of roster. But what we hope to do is sort of permeate the culture a little bit, sort of like I alluded to with the gentleman playing at a fashion show. We're looking to do those sort of things and place ourselves in different situations that change paradigms on the instrument. And I think all ensembles have to do that to a certain degree.
Now more than ever.
Now more than ever. And you mentioned that, and I couldn't help but think just a second ago, one of the things you were mentioning about culture and sort of thing. As we speak, the Minnesota Orchestra is on strike.
Yeah.
And to me...
And St. Paul Chamber Orchestra.
St. Paul as well. And I think about that, and it bothers me to no end, because I understand that the musicians have their side and the management has their side. I get it. And everybody feels entitled to their place. But if we stand back for a second, we are so, both sides of any orchestra on strike right now, in a time where we're in a recession, we're in a time where families are having to do more with less.
Correct.
And what's happening is they're looking for venues to go and enjoy a family evening with, but the money's not there. So we've gotten, for example, an orchestra on strike, and I understand their issues. I don't claim to understand what both sides are dealing with. But what I'll say is that when you get to a point where you're striking, you've involved yourself so much on the what that you miss the why. What's the why? The Minneapolis-St. Paul community needs this orchestra now.
Absolutely.
It needs it now. And for this to be going on, and again, it's reflecting a paradigm shift. I had mentioned before that, if you look at you can even take something like the Super Bowl. You take Beyonce's halftime show,
right?
And who's in the Super Bowl? Maybe not the last several years with some of the older acts that had been there, but if you look at what's happened, finally those groups that are in the center of the culture are the halftime show now. And so if you look back several years, you don't have to go back too far to see that there were different types of ensembles. Orchestras, bands were involved in the Super Bowl halftime show. An amazing concept if you think about it today, because now it's so much electricity around one or two women that it actually powers down the Superdome. But if you look at the cultural shift that's happening right now, music always has had, since the days of Bach even, has had to find a way to be relevant to the public which consumes it. And to me, we're in a dangerous time when the orchestra is not existing at all, in a time where, how long does this go? How long does the strike go? Does it go to such a point that the people who would have normally supported the orchestra are no longer there anymore? We've watched this happen in Cleveland. We watched it happen in Atlanta. We've watched it happen in Louisville. We've watched it happen across the country. Why? Because there's a cultural shift happening, and so we have to find a way to be relevant to those whom we're consuming. We're dealing with that in the Army. I see it every day at the United States Military Academy. We've been at war now for 10, 12 years, and the soldiers that were there in the sandbox, in the desert, they were not listening to concert band music on their iPods. They weren't. They were listening to Jay-Z and Alicia Keys and Beyonce, for example. That's who they listened to. And so you come back to the model, and I've talked about this today. You come back to that model of the concert band. Okay, how is the concert band relative to what a 17 to 25-year-old was listening to on his iPod? How is he relevant? How is that relevant to what he's doing? So we're in a challenging time, and those that will win, those that will last, will find a way to get those younger audiences into the seats.
And the way to get younger audiences into the seats, I think, is creative programming, variety of lights. I firmly believe that we have to have unique situations. We've got to involve chamber groups as well as big groups, and you've got to do some spatial
Exactly right.
changes and recognitions. And we've been wearing tuxedos and stuff for a long time. Well,
Yeah,
it's time for polos and blue jeans. And I mean, the relevance is they got to feel comfortable.
You're exactly right.
So I had a group in the Czech Republic, and we came in our tuxedos as well. And we gave this concert, and one of the agents came to me afterwards and said, you know what, you got to lose the tuxedos because you're scaring these people.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. He said, it's a folk culture, and you need to relax. So the tuxedos went away, the black jeans came on, the colorful polos. And so, is there a place for everything? There is. Is there respect for tradition? I have
Absolutely.
absolute respect for tradition. Are you going to come to my orchestra and see us in a tuxedo? You are. But if we play during the day, you'll see some colorful shirts, you'll see some this, you know, so depending upon who you're catering your performance to, I think it's really important to be open-minded.
I would agree with that.
And I'm really going to try to do that in the next 10 years.
And you know, the interesting thing is you always have a respect for the audience that you have.
Always.
First, that's where you start.
Number one.
You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. But you have to find a way to be innovative. I mean, when the reality of it is, I mean, you have these, I go back to the orchestras for a second. Why, ultimately, at the end of the day, what are they disputing over? They're disputing over money. Why don't they have money? Because people aren't paying ticket prices. Okay, so why aren't they paying the ticket price? Do you lower the ticket price? Well, then your revenue is still down. Or do you change your approach? And so I think that's where we are in the culture. We have to decide, are we going to completely change our approach? Are we maybe going to book the orchestra with maybe as a backup group to pop stars? I know that's like, that what I just said is sacrilegious to some people. But do we do that to raise revenue so that we can play what we actually want to play? So, and again, we're dealing with this in the Army. We deal with this every day because the vast majority of the Army is, you know, they're not in their 60s and 70s. They're in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s.
Sure.
And that is a different market. And you had better, as I said in a master class here on campus today, when the people, for example, I used the Army example, but when the people running the Army take a look, they come and sit down at a concert, and they've rented a hall, or they paid money for a hall, and they've paid for extra players to fill out the ensemble, and they see empty seats, and they see that, I mean, you've invested this money and there's no return. Now, granted, we don't take money in the Army. We don't charge for our concerts, but the greatest payment we can have is to have a full house and to have an enthusiastic audience. And if they're not seeing that, by necessity, something says that you're not reaching all the people that you could. And I think what bothers me deeply is that we're okay with it. We're okay with a hall that is mostly empty. One of the things I've seen you do on this campus over the last few days that I've been here, you have asked everyone I think I've seen, and I almost have felt sorry for people when they've run into you because I know they're going to get asked this question.
I'm sorry.
But no, it's awesome to watch, Chris, because I'll tell you that everyone I've seen you interact to said, are you going to be at the concert Thursday night? Are you going to be at the concert Thursday night? And I've actually been surprised at many of the students I've seen that I haven't seen in the music building say, yeah, we're planning on coming. And so that tells me something right is happening, because, you know, the arts reach such a wide body of people. And the ultimate, I mean, what is the ultimate goal of art? Is it to simply satisfy the artist? I mean, obviously we're breaking down into some philosophical questions here, but is what we're doing just to satisfy us? Because if it is, at the end of the day, then we won't care how many people are in the seats. We won't care. Or is what we're doing to reach people? Do we have something to say? Do we have a message to give to an audience? Because if you do, and that message begins to get out, ultimately, rear ends will land in the seats. And so that is, and I phrase it that way because at the end of the day, the people,
that's cute.
The people that are coming up, the people that are making the financial decisions in orchestral management, for example, are having to deal with that.
Yes, they are.
They're
It's a
having
reality.
to say, look, I know you want to play this piece, but we can tell you, based on playing that piece, that our revenue will drop this much. You know, and I think about it in International Tuba and Euphonium Association, which I'm part of. We know that if we have a conference in Europe, we'll lose about 30 to 40% of our membership. Why do we keep the conferences in the United States? Because we know we'll make revenue.
Right.
So it is, look, it's a sad reality. Even Bach was a church musician.
Yes, he was.
Even Bach was a church musician. He still had to.
I'm a church musician too. Are you?
Exactly. I have been, and
Yeah,
many times I am.
absolutely.
You know, but at the end of the day, obviously, an artist wants to create something that they can, you know, that is an expressive part of who they are, that reaches an audience. But at the end of the day, they got to feed themselves.
Yes.
At the end of the day, that has
It's a
to
reality.
happen.
It's got to be a job
And
too.
the way that happens is it happens through money, and that's just the truth. And so, you know, if we keep asking ourselves the question of what, and never why, we're in trouble. we're in real trouble. And I think that that's a position we are in the arts right now, especially in music, as we transition between audiences of different ages. And it's something we had better deal with.
And I believe that all of our educational institutions have to be open-minded to that as well.
Right.
And you know, on the front page of our little local paper here, it said, you know, there's a statement about what the philosophy is and what music that you're choosing, and they want it to be representative of all cultures. And of course, I say yay to that. And when I say cultures, I'm looking across the board this way, across the world, but I'm also looking from top to bottom at ages.
Right.
So for instance, on my upcoming St. Croix Valley Symphony Orchestra concert, yes, we're doing Dvorak, yes, we're doing Schubert's Unfinished Symphony, but you know, Leroy Anderson's Fiddle Faddle. Are you kidding? The Boston Pops has made so much money. It would be foolish of me not to think of that.
It's actually very entertaining.
And then we are, I think we're ending with Star Wars. So I'm at the meat market. I kid you not. And some young man walks up to me and says, when is that orchestra concert that you're playing Star Wars?
Exactly right.
And I said, I started laughing. I said, well, I think that one's Sunday, and then that one's Thursday. And you know, if you can program so there's something for everybody, and it's music is accessible and serves the public, I look at my role as, yes, I'm an educator, yes, I'm a musician, but it's my job to serve the public. It's not to just do what I want to do for the sake of my own ego. That's way gone.
And who's
That's
to
aside.
say? And who's to say that person who only heard that Star Wars was going to be on that concert? Who's to say that person maybe has never heard Dvorak?
Correct.
And
So we'll open.
You open the doors. You open the doors. I mean, obviously, Star Wars. If you don't know Star Wars, you don't have a pulse. Okay, that's a great piece of music. And it's great. Is it great because it's just a great piece of music? No, it's also great because we can't help but hear, we can't help but think of Darth Vader. We can't help but see Luke as the hero. We see all these things in our mind, when the fact of the matter is Dvorak, in his piece, is doing the exact same thing.
Exactly.
He had things going on in his mind that he wanted to convey to you, and it scares me a little bit to think that we have generations that don't know these composers and may never, because the same way we know and love John Williams. We hear John Williams and we hear Indiana Jones, or we hear Superman, and I know I'm dating him a little bit, but even some of his more recent films that he's done, we hear those things and we immediately see the films. Well, in the same way, these other composers who did not have the advantage of media, which is what John Williams has dealt in as a film composer. It is one of our main, I mean, hello, the Oscars just happened.
Yes, it is.
It's a major media outlet, but these other composers didn't have that, but the images they're trying to convey, if you read what they're writing, about their pieces, they're saying the exact same thing in just as amazing ways, if not more amazing ways. And to me, something like Johann de May. Johann de May has clear images in his head with the piece that you've commissioned. And so I hope that, and that's what music does, it conveys that message without using a single word. And to me, I've been all over the world, as you have, and to me, music continues to be a truly, as the human body with dance, as visual art, continues to be a way of reaching people globally that we can't do when I've been to China. I don't speak Mandarin. I don't have a clue what you're telling me, but I play a melody that they know, and it's like we've been friends for life. And so that's the power that you have as a musician, and it's a power we have to wield carefully
and respect.
And we have to respect it. That's exactly right, because we have a great gift, and it's something that I think is healthy and strong here at UWRF, and that I see you passionate about. And that's the first thing. You have to. Does the instructor care? And I love to see that in you. And
I definitely care.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm very concerned.
You interact with your students, and it's awesome to watch.
Yeah, and I don't just care about the students. I really care about the full community and those groups, and making this place a place of value. Right on. Inside and outside, because to me it's a sense of place. And we look at that St. Croix River, and that river unites us with Minnesota. I really truly look at it as all one big area that we can serve each other, and why not let music, be the thing that reflects your spirit and your soul in a positive way. Right. So thank you for sharing your music with us. It's been an honor to have you in residence at UW River Falls for a whole week.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Just exciting.
I don't get to usually stay in a place for a whole week. It's pretty neat to actually do it when I hit the road. So this has been a great experience.
Thank you so
hopefully
much.
I can come back sometime. So,
We'd love to have you in that tuba euphonium group anytime. Let's put it on the calendar.
Absolutely. Let's do
so
it.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.